Thank you. And thanks for joining me, Vicky.
Thank you for asking me. Very excited.
Indeed. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about AI today, and I know that's probably going to come up a fair amount this week. A few people probably talking about it. Hopefully we'll get to some of the actual practical applications of it, what you're using it for now and what you're hoping to use it for in the future. And so starting with really looking at that AI, the sort of the dream versus the reality as we are now. As a first question, which current and future state AI tools are you most excited about, and why?
I think in terms of the current state, so we obviously, like most brands, use AI for a lot of our media buying, specifically digital. We're not yet on the creative journey, and I think that's what I'm most excited about. So I think there's so much scope and so much options going forward. The quality's not quite there yet, but given time, I think it's going to be really exciting.
And I'm sure here there's an awful lot of new AI companies that are out there, and I'm sure as a brand you get an awful lot pitched to you.
Yeah, we do.
How do you go about that choice of deciding which one's legitimate, which one are you going to go ahead with it with, and also from my own perspective, when we talk about AI within our company, actually getting it through the gatekeepers, often through your IT and SecOps teams, can be quite a challenge. Have you got any tips for that, and how do you go about choosing and assessing any tools?
Yeah, I mean, the banking industry in the UK is a hugely regulated business, so every single asset that goes out to the market has to be approved by a number of different people. So the challenge that we have is to bring our internal teams on a journey that we can set up an approach where we can send creative out that hasn't been finally approved. And I think that is definitely coming very, very soon, but not yet. We're all massively at Lloyds wanting to change the way we work. We're going to become kind of the UK's strongest digital bank. So you would then anticipate everything taking on the new technologies. I mean, at the moment, in the development of our app, there is a lot of AI functionality in that, but we haven't yet communicated anything to external market from a creative point of view anyway, using any of the technology.
And obviously there's other banks out there that are seen as the newer, perhaps digital first banks. Is that a challenge that you face?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're much younger, they've got much more digitally led, quick enabled platforms than we have. We are in the process of following them. I think all of the kind of long heritage banks have got to do the same, otherwise they will fail. The fintechs are gaining market share at a rapid rate. That is where the digitally focused audience is, and that's where people are going with in how they kind of manage their money and what they want from brands in this kind of current state and time. It's not just younger, so you'd think just the younger audience is so digitally capable, but families and a lot of older now are becoming much more confident to do all their banking online, hence the closure of branches, telephony, etc. So it will just continue, and we have to keep up, otherwise we will fail.
Thank you. And on that, because you've got these young startups, when they're trying to use AI, I think it's quite a common conception that AI tends to be more powerful the more data that's fed into it. The more data there is, the better the output that it can generate. Do you think that puts banks like yourself or larger companies at an advantage when it comes to using AI, because you've got all of that wealth of data sat there, whereas new startups have no data really to start powering the AI?
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to, we're using, we've now approved to put our data through InfoSum. So we are starting to use our data in a kind of way to be much more targeted, and then obviously communicate to those audience in a way that where they are, what they do, what message resonates with them. But we're still quite far behind, I'll be honest, and it is a huge 2-year program to do more with our data. But if we weren't regulated, other brands, and Monzo are regulated again, but they seem, because they have brought on board in the way that they capture their permissions and data when they bring new customers on board, they've got that advantage, whereas we've got our legacy customers that are very difficult to go back and get their permissions to use their data in a way that we can be really effective in our marketing.
Of course, I think feeling behind on AI is probably quite a common sentiment amongst most brands, if we're honest. I think with if you look back in time, though, if you look at things like DMPs, that was all the rage, getting customer data into your DMP. Actually, how many advertisers ended up doing that anyway? Often people spend a lot of time and money getting that data and then not really activating it. So this might be a more controversial question. Obviously, at the moment, you've got advertisers, media agencies, and creative agencies. How do you think AI is going to impact the relationships between them?
I mean, it's interesting. So we've just launched a new current account campaign. As the media landscape is just becoming so in like fragmented, you've got to fight not just above any brands in the financial services sector, but any brands. Like, you are exposed to any one time 6 or 7 brands. You've got to be able to cut through all of the other noise. So the way you've got to do that, and we've created 250 assets for a non-linear TV-led campaign, purely to ensure that the messaging is relevant, it's contextually targeted, and you're going to stand out over and above all other brands that are fighting for people's time and space. So I think at the moment we are one team, media agency and creative agency and us. We work together as one team on absolutely everything. We do use a lot of research, AI research, so Empower research to test the creative before it kind of goes out to market, and that's incredible learnings that you get within 48 hours of turnaround based on creative behaviours is like plugged into the research. So I think we're doing it together at the moment, and our agency still has the QC. We still expect the QC to be followed, and we need to try and move forward, because it's just not efficient or effective to create 250 assets every time you go out to market.
Yeah,
it really isn't.
Yeah, I can well imagine that. And so with the trend to in-housing, do you think AI will help accelerate that, or do you see it just as an add-on and not going to impact those kind of relationships?
I think we don't have the expertise in-house to do that yet. I'll be honest. I think we will still need to use what we'll always do. I always still believe you'll always need a human to write a TV script or a radio script. I can't ever imagine AI writing a absolutely award-winning and brilliant TV script that you then take to market. I can't ever imagine that happening, and I hope it doesn't, because I think humans have got such creative brains, and there's some really, really talented people out there. So I think your main campaign idea will then follow through into different versions of how AI can optimise your creative.
And that kind of leads into what was going to be one of the next questions, which is, with AI, can it ever be truly creative? Or are you in danger, if you use AI to generate all of your creative assets, you're in danger of ending up having ever more vanilla creative campaigns, which lack a bit of cut through, a little imagination or humour even?
Yeah, I think so, and I think we did do a test on some of our conversion current account early on in the year, and it was a very small test, just so we could, and the quality is just really poor. Your copy was all over the place. The horse was half cut off. So it's going to get there, I do believe, because obviously the more and more you feed it, the stronger it becomes and the higher quality. But I think when you've got such a traditional, iconic asset that we have in terms of the black horse, you've got to be really careful about how you use that.
Don't want it to become a black cat.
No. I mean, my CMO did a post actually a few weeks ago on our social channels where he did a kind of AI horse, and it looked skinny. It looked kind of weird. It just looked like a more of an animated horse as opposed to an actually real black horse. But you've got to keep that humour and tone of voice in what you do, because that's where you're going to stand out. So I don't know yet whether, I don't think anyone knows this, do they? Like, I don't know yet whether that will that will come, because it is so data driven. How do you bring in that kind of tone of voice and personality?
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a challenge. And at what point do you let AI take over? Which I guess, if I look back, 5-6 years, if you were going to launch a digital campaign, you might have 5 standard IAB formats that would need to be produced, and that would be it. If I now look at, you add in all of the social channels, if you're doing CTV and other video channels, audio, etc., you might be looking at 30 plus creative elements you've got to produce. The way I see it is potentially AI can help solve that production issue and speed to market. How's your experience of that been?
We haven't. I mean, I hope that would happen. I hope we start looking at that kind of going into the year, because if you have something templated, so for example, our club account comes with lifestyle benefits, because you can choose Disney Plus, cinema tickets, coffee club, or magazine subscriptions. So you would hope that you could feed who you want to target with what message into a template. And a lot of brands do it. The Mars do it quite well at the moment with their pet food. So they are doing it well, but we're just not confident enough that the level of quality is there yet. But we'll keep on testing. I think we've got to keep on testing.
Of course. And if AI can help solve that problem of being able to help you produce, say, 30 different creative assets for your digital campaign, but it can then add limitless variations of them, dynamic variations of them. What do you see as how that will impact your brand activity as well as your performance marketing activity? I'll give one example. We did once have a client ask us if they could retarget a nappy or diaper brand with a baby's name on it. We said that might not be a good idea. Probably a bit creepy, and most people don't want that. How would you see, if you're able to have limitless versions of creative built by AI, how's that going to impact your approach to the marketing?
Oh, it'll be huge, because it means that we can have more and more formats out there, more and more kind of opportunity to speak to customers. I think it'll be like, I don't know if you said the Mars stuff, they actually have the types of dog that you have. I don't know if you've seen it. So they know the AI tool knows what dog you have, so then serves you pet food with the picture of the type of dog that you have on, which I think is really clever, really, really clever.
And do you think there's a blurred line there, though, between clever and slightly creepy?
Yeah, but I think people expect that now, don't they?
Yeah.
They expect, there's so much of your data that you give away without knowing, that people know exactly who you are, where you are. They even know what you're talking about, because then you get an ad a couple of hours later about what you've been talking about. Like it's just becoming so sophisticated that I don't think consumers will now take it as a bit of a kind of intrusion of privacy, which is what, give it 10 years ago, it would be like, absolutely no way will I trust that brand. But whereas now, I think perceptions have changed about how your data is used and how much you do give away without knowing.
Of course. I mean, I think that, like I said, I think there is a fine line there, but it is becoming more common, and people want relevance rather than just a generic ad being delivered to them. So. Yeah,
and I think you can do the media targeting very easily now. I think it's the relevance, but also the creativity. Because if you serve a message that's just quite bland and boring, then you're not going to cut through. Somebody else will. Somebody else will take that advantage.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about using AI pre-campaign launch to assess assets and how they're going to perform.
Yeah.
Are there any other areas where you see AI being important in the optimising, the measurement of your campaigns and activity?
Yeah, so within our performance marketing activity, we do use AI to optimise. So obviously you've got the natural algorithms in the likes of Meta, but actually now what we're looking at is how do you optimise the creative message to that customer, not just based on, well, that creator is performing better than that, but is that messaging cutting through, and actually should we then target different audiences based on who's engaging with that asset? I think that capability is becoming really quite interesting.
Yeah, and do you see any of the tools, particularly being any of the DSPs, for example, or you've got all of the social media platforms, they're all launching or have launched their own AI. I'm sure they come in and pitched you on a weekly basis. Are there any in particular that caught your eye, or any that you're really excited about, enthusiastic about trying?
There's we're testing a new sort of product area for the mass affluent, so people that earn 75k or over on an individual income, which is very small. There's a very small proportion of them in the UK, and we want to, and it's very difficult to find where they are. It's quite targeted, because otherwise you end up with a huge amount of wastage. So there's a tool that Zenith are looking at the moment, and with a DSP, they haven't we're waiting for the response to how. So they buy it, like there's various DSPs that buy in like Waitrose data or O2 data or various different data that can actually tell if they're earning 75k over or not, which means that we can put them straight into the product rather than having to go through a salary verify, which actually is 2 steps before you apply, which would people just get turned off and go elsewhere. So we're using that as a bit of a test case, and I think that'll be really interesting because I think it's just really important now that you have to be able to speak to people that you want to at the right time with the right message, in an effective way.
Of course. And that's on the DSP side? Is there any of the social platforms out there, or other platforms out there that you've seen that have caught your eye or done anything interesting?
Not TikTok are getting getting some quite exciting ways in, but not yet. We're still. I mean, we only launched on TikTok this year, so we're still quite new. We've done Meta, Google, YouTube for a long time, and we know that works. But TikTok, I think, is the area that's growing at such a fast pace, and from a creative point of view, is quite fun and quite engaging. Yeah. So I believe that that's probably. I mean, I certainly engage more with TikTok than any other digital channel because it's fun. Comparing
that to something like LinkedIn, for example, where the creative is a little more challenging, perhaps.
Yeah, no, I just lose half my life on TikTok there. Just get sucked in.
And one of the concerns I think some people have with AI is that it might miss when it comes to trying to activate audiences, find audiences, and match them to creative messages. It might miss some of those nuances, either cultural nuances or emotional nuances that won't necessarily be apparent. Yeah. Do you have any concerns around that, or do you think it's part and parcel of what you've got to accept? Or
I think you've got to test and learn, keep testing and learning and seeing what happens. I think as long as you know that it could go in the wrong way, in the wrong direction in the back of your head whilst you're testing and learning, you will then begin to understand what works for you as a brand versus other platforms, I think. But the emotion, if you lose any sort of emotion from any of your advertising, then you've just lost somebody at the first hurdle. So the emotional connection, whether that be through humour or whatever, you've got to still make sure that that's cutting through. Otherwise, there's just no point in doing it.
Of course. And assuming that AI is successful in all of this, it should free up an awful lot of your team's time to focus on other tasks. What kind of things would you prefer that people were able to spend their time doing if AI were taking over some of the more mundane day-to-day activities?
I mean, just kind of getting more kind of clued up on all the different media channels. Where are the opportunities going forward? What is AI doing really, really well in? What are other brands doing in this space? Like, how can we optimise and take learnings from them? Because at the minute, doing 250 assets is just incredibly time consuming, and getting all them signed off by about 5 or 6 stakeholders for each one. It is. So I'd love, hopefully some of this will take the pressure off us to then focus on how we can grow the brand in other areas and learn from other brands and what they're doing.
Of course. And to date, what's been your biggest success, would you say, in actually using AI, not a future state hypothetical? Yeah. What have you actually done now that you've been like, that was awesome, that really, really helped?
I think the meta-targeting through AI, which effectively took all the different current account messaging and then optimised it to the people that we know. So we fed the data in to say, magazine subscription over-indexes to older, Disney Plus over-indexed to families. So they use their AI kind of algorithm to do that and do it effectively, rather than putting a load of creative in there and letting the algorithm kind of optimised for the best creative. It was actually bespokely kind of. I mean, we haven't got the results yet, but I think that's going to be. I mean, it should be, right? It should be.
Yeah.
It should. You would think.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. We've always looked at audiences in isolation and not necessarily looked at the crossover between those audiences. Tried to expand them out to both get you better reach, but also hopefully boost the performance, right?
Yeah, and we don't do anything around geo location. So, for example, is that person falling into our older category? Loves magazine subscriptions, therefore serve her magazines that she might or he might be interested, but also over indexes into, say, Manchester, for example.
Yeah.
All of that stuff will get so sophisticated and targeted. You should get a much stronger engagement rate and return on investment. You should.
Should.
And I don't think it's going to be that long. I think it will get really sophisticated.
No, I think it's vital that people try this now, right? As it starts to be activated, and don't wait till later.
Yeah. Well, all the new startups and all the kind of digital brands are massive in that space, and we are, I will admit, very behind in that space. So.
Yeah, and final question for me. Outside of the marketing world, which application of AI are you most excited about?
Education.
And is this for your children or for yourself?
Yeah, for my children, so that I don't have to do it all or help them. No, I think there's a massive opportunity there. I think the more and more, I mean, you know what, you've got kids as well, similar age to mine, and the amount of time they spend on digital platforms, I mean, at the minute, there could be more done in the education, and they could make it really fun, really interesting. At the minute, they have to do their homework online, and that's it. Whereas if different platforms built some functionality into YouTube Shorts, for example, which brings in kind of they know that how old you are, what topics you're doing at school, like time of year, so that could link into what they're being taught at school, make it fun and engaging. I think there's so much opportunity there.
I just wish they could have done that pre-COVID for lockdown when we had to do homeschooling.
Yeah, I agree.
That would have really helped me out for sure.
That was not easy.
Not fun or easy, I'd say.
No, it was not. Especially when you were shooting ads in your bedroom. All through lockdown. Yeah, just fills me with horror.
I'm sorry to bring it up. Brought back bad memories. So that's the end of our questions. Did anyone else have any questions for Vicky on AI?
Yes. Are you looking at applying it also to media distribution, together with creative as well? And if yes, now, are you currently using it in that field? Just curious.
It's probably a question for you, isn't it?
So, how was your question? How do you use it in the media buying space as well as creative?
To understand how they were using it specifically, what kind of, how would they use it to buy spaces, to optimize the buying of those spaces?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of AI that's being used to try and aggregate different data sets and audience sets to bring them together to then activate through a DSP, for example. But obviously the social platforms and a lot of the closed ecosystems, walled gardens, hold an awful lot of their own data that they're in a unique position to be able to utilize AI with. Often with that type of AI application, it's about the amount of data you have. And the more you hold, the better the outcomes. So for someone like Meta, they're at a massive advantage over most other platforms to be able to do that. I think if you're looking to try and do it in open web, it's becoming more challenging as third-party cookies disappear. So being able to collect that data and then apply AI to find the right audience for you becomes trickier and trickier. I think there's other bits of AI like Creative X, for example, that do analysis pre-activation, and that's a very interesting use case of it. So they're looking at they're looking at is your creative on brand? What score will it have? What impact will it have with your audience? So it's matching it against the right audience types. Will this appeal to them? Which is another useful application. I don't work for Creative X, just to be clear, but plug for them.
I've got a question for you. That's all right.
Yeah.
Anyone else has got one? Who do you admire from both a brand and platform point of view that are using AI well?
Ooh,
That I can learn from.
good question. Well, like I said, I think I think Meta's doing quite a good job with their AI and making some other tech that was plugged into their platforms kind of redundant with it. Just the amount of audience data they've got is ludicrous. LinkedIn's another one that's actually doing some really nice stuff with AI and audiences. So they're both doing very, very well. In terms of a brand that's interesting using it, Sky do a very good job with both generative AI to overcome that problem I was talking about with having hundreds of different creative that they need to have built. So automating that process as much as possible.
They do that in-house as well, don't they?
They do, yeah. So that would be my answer.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well thank you very much for your time,
No,
Vicky, and
thank you.
thank you all for listening. Have a good rest of Cannes. Thank you.
Thank you.